So then, well, what are the sources of this features of the Japanese person, at least in terms of the dominant Japanese image? Let us now turn to the last general category of materials in this module, which I'm simply calling Japanese morality. From an American point of view, Japanese people are immoral. Japanese people have no sense of principles. Japanese people are unprincipled. Well, yes, you can make the case that Japanese people are not principled. They don't live in a world of principles. But you can't make a case that Japanese people are not moral. Rather, what constitutes Japanese morality contrasts with what counts as morality in a Western context. Now, when I raised this in class, I talked a little bit about morality and principles. I asked, can you identify any principles against which we measure ourselves? And so people raised their hands and listed such things as thou shalt not kill, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. They started running down through 10 commandments until finally someone said, well, and the rest of the 10 commandments. In other words, the whole 10 commandments functions as a set of principles. We talked about a legal system, a set of laws. I also mentioned codes of ethics. The way engineering ethics is taught in the United States is as a set of principles that somehow stand behind engineering behavior and against which engineering behavior gets measured. Well, picture a world now without principles. Picture a world in which we don't draw a sharp distinction between some abstract morality or abstract set of moral dogma or an abstract moral order from the actual. This is a tough one to think about. And in terms of Japanese images, there is not a formally recognized separation between the world of the moral and a moral order and the actual everyday world. A result of this is a kind of pragmatism, where the people are pragmatic, meaning that they adapt their activities and their behavior to changing circumstances. From an American point of view, Japanese, indeed Asians, sometimes appear to be overly pragmatic, overly adaptive, overly changing, and to the extent of seeming to be somehow manipulative or conniving. Well, wait a minute. You've got to understand this very sharp difference in what counts as morality in the Japanese and generally an Asian context. The sharp contrast between that and the West. Focusing specifically on Japan, the phenomenal world, the world of the present, is absolute. And the world of the present includes both the natural and, say, the spiritual. The Shinto religion, about which we're going to spend some time discussing in a moment, is almost wholly centered in this world. So the focus in Japanese everyday life is on, and in Japanese philosophy and indeed religion, is on this world, which shifts the meaning and presence of religion in everyday life. In our context, we measure everything against a set of background principles. And indeed, we also conceive of our lives and our world as somehow, we conceive it against a backdrop of the past. In a Japanese context, and indeed an Asian context, everything is measured not against the past, but against the future. The ultimate purpose of action in a Japanese context, the ultimate goal in everyday action involves an orientation to the future. The ultimate goal is to achieve a universality, to achieve a permanence. There's a collective commitment to an ideal future state of communal well-being. We're working for the future. We don't work against the past. Think about the concept of progress in this country. But we reckon progress in terms of material well-being and standards of living, standards of life improving. and indeed over the past 150 years in the United States, it has been expected that each generation will be better off than the next. Right now, that may be changing. The generation now in college is really the first one whose parents are questioning whether or not their children will be better off than they are, and wondering whether or not they're going to be supporting their children in some substantial way for periods that go way past adolescence and way past the beginning of adulthood. In any case, we reckon ourselves, we measure ourselves in terms of our past. The Japanese are working towards an ideal future. They are working together inside of a household in order to build a better future. And they get there by fulfilling appropriate obligations, or obligations that are appropriate depending upon their positions in the household. They know that they're getting better. Indeed, material well-being is part of it, but also achieving a harmony, a spreading harmony is evidence. And a harmony isn't just among people, but it's a harmony that includes humans and nature. In an Asian context, generally, there's not a sharp distinction drawn between humans and nature. The source of this lies in Confucianism, but I won't be elaborating that in any detail. It's important only for you to be able to see that the measurement or the metric that Japanese are applying to themselves is about movement towards rather than movement away from. Now, what is the source? What are the sources of these expectations and these orientations in everyday Japanese morality? In order to understand that, it is useful then to start talking, to take a few minutes to look into religions that live in Japan.